The city of New York wants to make internet free for tenants. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, another great article for you today coming out of New York. And I will keep saying it, but New York is probably up there, top 5 of the most tenant-friendly places in the entire country, okay? And we're talking about New York City and New York State. Very, very tenant-friendly places. So basically, they want to give free internet service, and I say free with quotation marks because nothing is truly free. They want to give free internet service to tenants, and they want the landlords to pay for it. And as most of us being landlords know, everything that we have to pay for the tenants, we charge back, or we figure out some way to make the tenants pay for it anyway. So it's not going to end up being free. It's going to end up costing in some other way to them. So yeah, this article, it's going to cover that story. But before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Do you think it's a good idea for landlords to have to provide internet service to tenants? I know I don't. I think it's a completely ridiculous idea. They think that tenants don't have access to Wi-Fi. Well, most people, they get their internet through their phone nowadays, okay? So not having a wired connection or even a Wi-Fi connection doesn't really mean anything if you're getting everything through 5G LTE, okay? So this article comes from reason.com, and it says, New York City considers requiring landlords to provide free internet to tenants. And let's see what it says. Reason usually has some pretty good articles, so I like it. Eviction moratoriums effectively required landlords to provide free housing to non-paying tenants during the pandemic. In New York City, landlords might soon have to provide free internet services as well. A new bill introduced by New York City Council member Ben Kallos would require the owners of buildings with 10 or more units to provide their tenants with free broadband internet service. We can finally end the digital divide and bridge the homework gap by making sure every apartment in New York City comes with internet, said Kallos in a statement. You can't get a vaccine if you can't get online to schedule or even find an appointment. This pandemic has shown that the internet is now a necessity. Yeah, I agree that the internet is a necessity, but what I disagree on is that the housing providers have to be the ones to make sure that the tenants have internet, okay? That is not part of any of our obligations, okay? Internet, it's a necessity to a point, right? You won't die if you don't have internet service, okay? There are public libraries where they have computers set up with internet connections that you can go down to. You can sign up for, your vaccine or whatever this guy was saying. And make an appointment. You can, do whatever all on your public library. So what we're really talking about here is a government function, and the government is trying to pass the buck on down to us landlords, and I don't like that, okay? That's the same kind of mess that they were doing with the eviction moratorium, and that's exactly what this article is saying. The government was trying to pass its responsibility on to private business owners. So what's going to happen if they do decide to pass this bill, okay? They're going to say, okay, now landlords have to provide this free internet service. So all the landlords in New York City who aren't under rent control, they're going to raise rents appropriately to compensate for those losses, okay? For the additional charges for having to provide internet service. Now, my biggest gripe is that they're saying that landlords of buildings over 10 units have to provide it. Well, instead of targeting people who are most in need of actually needing internet service, they just said, well, we want everyone to have free internet. So now you're going to tell me that there's people out there, who are renting, who are making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, and you're going to have to provide free internet service to them for no reason. They don't need free internet service. They don't need an additional thing paid for by their landlord. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's just like when they were passing stimulus checks out to people who didn't lose their jobs during the pandemic. Okay? Absolute waste. And, obviously this is coming from the government, so they know all about waste. A press release from Kalos's office cites a 2020 Citizens Committee for Children report finding that 500,000 households in the city have no internet access. His bill gives building owners the option of directly contracting with a broadband internet service provider or connecting each unit via Ethernet cable to the internet. Owners would also have to install the wiring and Ethernet ports necessary to provide that internet service in each unit. So yeah, now the owner has to go through and they have to, pay for cabling and wiring and installation and getting everything there and, spending tens of thousands of dollars just so they can provide free internet service. This is ridiculous, okay? And they should know that this just isn't going to work. They didn't put any kind of tax breaks or subsidies or anything in this package. They just think that all these landlords are just, we're just perfectly willing to just spend tens of thousands of dollars for internet service for a lot of people who don't want or don't need their internet service, okay? Instead, they should have said, okay, what we're going to do is the people who have, low incomes as a city, we're going to create a fund or a subsidy for them that would provide them with internet service, individually or through private means. Okay, so they would pay for whatever the internet service provider is to provide internet service to these low-income families. That's what they should have done. Okay, that's how you do it correctly, not forcing landlords to wire up their buildings, spend thousands of dollars, and then provide free internet service to people who don't need it largely. Okay. Cable installers who spoke with Reason declined to provide ballpark figures for how much this might cost building owners, citing the large number of factors that could influence a project's cost. The home remodeling cost website Fixer estimates that installing the kind of cabling required by Kalos's bill would cost up to $6,000 in an existing single-family home. The cost of installing it in a larger building would likely be much higher. Kalos's bill would forbid property owners from passing the cost of cable installation and internet service on to tenants. Yeah, well, you can try to forbid it, but there's ways around that, okay? And the easiest way would be, if you're not rent controlled, just to raise the rents. Okay, rents are going up. If it costs me $100 more a month now for every single tenant, then so be it. Now, for those who are under rent control, well, sorry, that's one of the reasons I don't like rent control, okay? You're in a place where you can't even raise rents to cover the additional costs that you have to bear to make it so you can barely make a profit, if at all. You probably can't make a profit in that sort of situation if they add enough cost onto you, if they raise your taxes enough, if they put enough additional regulations such as this one onto you, you just get to the point where you're not making a profit. So yeah, this is pretty bad. When the New York State legislature put stricter limits on the kinds of maintenance and capital expenditures that the owners of rent-stabilized buildings could pass on to tenants, critics warned that landlords would simply cut maintenance spending, leading to shabification. Landlord groups have said the building owners will respond similarly to an internet service mandate. So yeah, and I agree with that, okay? So I'm pretty sure what they mean by shabification, and I went over this in another one of my articles, and basically landlords aren't going to be doing maintenance. They're not going to be doing updates, and the building is just it'll be patched together. It'll be just enough to be livable, but it will be garbage, okay? Imagine, just as an example, you're living in a house or in an apartment and nothing has been updated in 40 years. So you got this old green stove. It still works. They pay, like, to get it fixed, or they send their handyman over to fix it, but it is old, it is ugly, and it's obsolete, but it still functions. So you still have a stove, but they're not going to buy you a new stove. Why would they? Because simply put, they're not making enough money to make it worth it. And so this will just add to it, especially in these rent controlled units. The cliche term, "there is no free lunch," applies perfectly to rent-stabilized apartment buildings, wrote Jay Martin, executive director of the Community Housing Improvement Program, a landlord group on Twitter. Every mandate, every regulation, every free requirement pushes the cost to operate them higher. That forces owners to increase rents and provide weaker quality housing. At a minimum, landlords wouldn't have a huge incentive to provide quality internet service for free. And they wouldn't, okay? They would get the cheapest, worst quality, lowest end internet service they could possibly get. And why would they pay for high speed, fiber optic internet? I mean, I wouldn't. So bad news if this bill passes. I hope it doesn't. It sounds like it is a complete joke, and it doesn't surprise me one bit to see that this article is coming out of New York. They want to pass all these costs on to the landlords. They're not willing to do what it really takes to make sure that those people who do need internet service get it, and those who don't need it, we don't have to waste any money on. So just another garbage, landlord hating, tenant friendly bill coming out of New York City.